the worst.
Oh, it is the worst. And I think it's recording, so.
Every month you make the same plug for WebEx, man. Nobody's gonna buy in
plug
WebEx.
It's like, hey, I want you all to, buy this timeshare. Cool. All right. So, DenverScript. Welcome, everyone. March, virtual 2021. Holy shit. And, okay. So, we haven't had a sponsor in over a year, mainly because we've had enough money to carry us on for our operating costs for our Meetup account and our Zoom account. And then luckily Mike came in for the save and Quizlet became a sponsor. Thank you, Quizlet. Mike, what the hell is Quizlet?
Yeah, so Quizlet is an online learning platform. So simplest terms, it's, digital flashcards, but we also have like additional learning modalities to help you learn whatever it is that you want to learn. We have offices, San Francisco, Denver, New York, and London. We are hiring. So if you're interested, feel free to send me a message and yeah, we can chat.
It's like remote learning became popular. Sounds like it'll be.
Sounds like it'll be successful. Corona.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Quizlet. Thank you, Mike, for setting that up. Really appreciate it, man. Schedule as usual. We got intros, job announcements, what's going on in JavaScript land. Angie Davidson be giving our shorter presentation, and then longer presentation will be Mr. Drew Dahlman, all the way from New York City. And questions and closing thoughts. So let's start jumping into it. If you have job announcements, please post them in the chat. We'll post them out later. We are an open collective, which means we are a nonprofit, which means we can take donations. Garrett has been a $5 a month donator for like 2 years now. And luckily Quizlet came into that might be just like one of those subscription things you like forgot about, but I'm not going to tell Garrett about it. And then Quizlet came in to help us out, which, really it costs about $500 a year just in Meetup costs and a Zoom account, like just to run a Meetup. So any money people can give is always appreciated. Call for speakers. We're always looking for new speakers. We still have speaker openings for next month as well. If you're interested, ping me, Mike, or Guillermo. Or if you go to DenverScript.com, there's the link to submit a talk, and we'll get in touch with you once you've submitted. This is our code of conduct's usually just like mostly for when we're in person, but the first couple things here that still apply is be excellent to each other, don't be a dick. It's the bottom line there, things I think we all get behind. Be inclusive. Of course, this is more of like the when we're in person, but most importantly, no statement questions of like, well, here's what I think, or like, oh, you presented it that way? You should have done this, because that's not helpful and disrespectful to the speakers. So cool. What's going on in JS land? Where? Oh, all right. How to use a computer, I forget.
All right, so what's going on in JavaScript land? For those that are new, we do this every month. We talk about things that we're excited about, and then we ask you for the things you're excited about in JavaScript land. So as always, we'll start with Chrome DevTools whenever it has a new release that syncs up with our Meetup. So Chrome 89 came out. We have links here to the highlights video and the release notes, and also all of these things that we're going to list here, not just the ones that we're covering, but any of the ones that you guys contribute as well. Matt always does a great job of adding those to the posts or the comments to this Meetup on meetup.com. And also additionally, like as you share your ideas, if there are resources or whatever, we can get those links and enhance it afterwards. But diving into Chrome 89, so there's a few things here that we can take a look at. So the first one is they added some debugging capability for trusted type violations. So you can actually set breakpoints now and see what are the violations that were triggered and see what about the content security policy was an issue there. The next one was, oh yeah, so this is, as we've seen for regular viewers, and you've seen how like the DevTools team usually picks like a lane and then just like develops multiple features along that, like they kind of get into a rhythm with it. So this one for capturing screenshots of nodes, this came out a release or two ago where it's really cool. You can actually go into the element inspector, right click on an element in the DOM and say capture screenshot, and it'll capture a screenshot for you of just that element in the DOM. So now they enhance that. And so what you can do is you can go to any element in the DOM, even if it's below the fold of what's actually rendering on the page, and it'll capture a screenshot for you, even if it's not visible on your screen. So that's pretty cool. They added a trust token tab to the network tab. So trust tokens, I don't know much about them, but apparently they're a new kind of token that's used to combat automated bots and things. And so you can actually inspect and work with these new trust tokens in the network tab with the trust token tab that they have. As always, they have additional Lighthouse audits. I usually don't break these down because they come every release, just additional audits. So if you use Lighthouse a lot, there's new stuff again. And then some cool stuff to the elements panel. We can see here that now you can, if you right click on an element in the DOM, you can click on duplicate and it'll actually just like duplicate for you identically. So this is cool. Like if you want to like, sometimes this stuff might be useful if you don't want to go into your code and maybe like, let's say you need a list or something to be longer to see how it would render on your page or how your wrapping would work or something like that. Sometimes like for me, I'll go into the actual JavaScript and then make like the array longer artificially or something. You can actually go here and actually duplicate the elements just by right clicking and doing it that way. And the other thing that was pretty neat is you can now in your CSS inspector, you can now copy to your clipboard entire blocks of CSS properties. And you see here some of the options that you can choose. And you can also now hover over an individual property and copy that as well. So sometimes it can get tricky if you guys have ever tried this where you're trying to like highlight the line and instead it goes into like edit mode for like that property and it's kind of a pain. So now you can just right click and either grab all the properties at once or just an individual one. So that's what I'm excited about in JavaScript. And it looks like we already have a high five moment from someone who wants to share what that was.
Oh yeah, that was me.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so one feature that I had worked on earlier this year was adding like an animated GIF for like a loading screen. And then after working with some of our mobile engineers, they brought up this library called Lottie, which allows designers to take their like animations from After Effects and it exports it as a JSON blob. And then that's what you get to send. So instead of sending an image asset, you just like send a JSON blob. So ideally, it should make your like payload smaller without any loss of, animation details. So yeah, digging into that, it's pretty cool.
Nice, awesome. And so along those lines, when we say like, hey, what are you guys excited about? This can be anything from high level, from like software development in general. It can be language specific to JavaScript. It can be framework specific, or it could be something that's just not new news at all. It could be something that's new to you. Like for example, Mike discovered this package that he's been working with that he's been, enjoying using. If there's maybe something new that you discovered that was useful, or if you even just had like what we call a high five moment where you were just debugging some gnarly bug and you finally figured it out and none of your in real life friends could appreciate it, you can share it with us here and we'll be happy with you. So what are some things that you guys are excited about? New or new to you or otherwise?
So I'll share. I just speak out. This is only like my second time being here. Do I just go for it?
Yes.
Go for it.
And it's great to see you again, by the way. But yes.
Yes, sir. So on the job, I just learned. I mean, this does it have to be JavaScript related? It has to be JavaScript
There's a safe space. You can just share something you're excited about.
Front end related, or whatever.
So I don't know if you guys ever try to work out flows or like writing diagrams or anything like that. I just learned about UML. Give me 1 second, bro. I just learned about UML, specifically plant UML, for writing like sequence diagrams and entity models and things like that. And it was pretty outrageous how simple it was, because I come from a place where all our diagrams are written on whiteboards and then we take pictures of them and send them to everybody, and it's horrible and awful. So the cool thing about UML, for anybody that doesn't know, is you write it in basically plain English. You can track it with a Git, so you can push it up to the code repository. It runs in most editors. It's absolutely free. And then you don't have to worry about styling. You can track your changes. And it's pretty much just a pretty awesome powerhouse tool.
That's awesome. When you were getting started with it, what are some resources that you use to get up to speed?
So UML's the bigger language model, right? Like a unified modeling language, I think is what UML stands for. The website, or the one I went with specifically, was Plant UML. So it's just plantuml.com. Yep. And right off the bat, they kind of get you into some basic modeling and how it works. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic.
So if you scroll down just a little bit on that one, I'll show you real quick. So that little box, so that Bob, Arrow, Alice is how you get that diagram on the right. So that's like a super simple example of how it just automatically generates the diagram for you.
Oh, that's super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah, that was great. Thanks for sharing that.
Yep.
Who else has something to share?
Hey, Justin from Seattle JS here again.
Hello, welcome back.
Have some meetups coming up tomorrow, doing a special edition of our Code Katas meetup in the afternoon, 3:30 Pacific time. It's a coding and challenges event that we do monthly. I'm doing it with my old boot camp in Florida. So it's Wednesday afternoon. I do a monthly one every third Tuesday of the month as well. And Thursday we have a lean coffee event at 5:30 Pacific time. If anybody's interested in doing a lean coffee, there you go, Seattle JS. Next week we have our monthly event. I am short one speaker, so if anybody feels like doing their talks again next week, I have a spot. I have one talk already lined up, but looking to fill a spot with a second one. If anybody's interested and looking for spots throughout the year. So that's me, Seattle JS. Check us out.
If people are interested, do they just go through the Meetup page and message you there?
We have a website. We put use GitHub issues to submit talks and such, but it's short notice. If you can message me on Meetup. You can find me at Justin Oliver Lee on LinkedIn. You can join our Slack, also Justin Oliver Lee on there. Many, many ways to get a hold of me.
Brown.
Cool. And Justin, I've got to ask, so you live in Seattle?
Yeah, I'm in just right outside in Bellevue.
So I have to ask, how many other cities meetups do you join?
I do this Denver one. I've joined a Utah one. I do some in Florida with my boot camp that I came from 2 years ago, and I try and find random ones. But this is then the DenverScript one's the one I attended most outside of Seattle,
Gotcha.
other than the Florida ones.
Gotcha. Well, cool. Thanks for sharing.
No problem.
Let's
The nice thing about being remote, everybody being remote these days, is you can attend meetups all over the place.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Cool. So let's do one or two more and then we'll wrap it up.
I've got one. So there's this awesome, I don't know if this has been mentioned, it's the 3JS journey.xyz. Basically, if you've ever wanted to learn about 3JS or learn about any of those 3D models and kind of creating interactive experiences. There's a guy, his name's Bruno Simon. He's a teacher over in France. He has numerous websites. You've probably seen some of them. One is his portfolio where you drive a car around. He basically put together this entire lesson that you can essentially purchase. And right now he's got like a sale going on for it, but it's really awesome. If you are new to 3JS and you've always wanted to do it, or even if you have been doing it for a while, there's a lot of really cool things in there. I actually went through and purchased it, and I've been going through it, and it's a lot of fun. So fun thing if you're really into any of the 3D side of JavaScript.
Awesome. Thanks, Drew.
Cool.
Okay. Unless somebody wants to jump in now, forever hold your peace.
Let me jump in.
All right, cool. I was in
Okay.
a situation where I was wanting someone to cut me off. Like, let's get one more.
I shall accommodate.
Yeah,
So
go.
basically, I've been learning React and then morphing into Next.js. And so over at Coding for the Web Meetup, we're doing a series of classes, basic introductory level on Next.js with the headless Netlify CMS, building out what I'm saying is a personal blog site, just to explore some of the functionality there. So we've been doing it a couple of weeks and we keep restarting. So tomorrow night is our latest restart. So anyone who's interested, see us there.
Awesome, thank you. And let's actually, we'll do a last one here. Devin, go ahead and bring us home.
Yeah, so I've been working on a new project using Snowpack, which if you haven't heard of it, it is like an ES module based bundler, kind of like Webpack, all up other tools, kind of built on the unbundled paradigm where in development use the like ES module loader in the browser, and just has a lot of niceties with it. But it had a really cool moment with it where I was doing a kind of UX review with our product owner, and just like going through and making changes as we're talking through it. And of course, most tools, most bundlers have had like live reload for a while. There's a really cool feature that Snowpack has. I don't think it's exclusive to Snowpack, but it's not like common everywhere, called fast refresh, where it actually can do hot reloading of a particular module and preserve the state of that module. So that the benefit that was just really cool to see in action was I like went through a bunch of steps to get into an error state, and then I was tweaking the error view, and I could just go change values in my components, and this is a Svelte project, and it would just live update those, and I wouldn't have to go through the steps every time I made a change. So just really kind of powerful tool that when we initially were looking at Snowpack, it was like, I think this will be like game changing. And so it's fun to like have that moment of like, oh, this actually is game changing.
That's
Could I
fantastic.
just comment on Snowpack?
Sure.
Part of the reason for fast refresh is that Snowpack goes through your entire dependency tree and creates an individual module for obviously your dependencies. But once that's fixed, it doesn't rebuild. So that is basically caching all the dependencies. And it's only when you make some sort of change, does it go and build just that dependency. So you're not sitting there waiting for the whole dependency tree to be rebuilt on a refresh. Anyway,
Yeah.
just my input.
Yeah, and that's another huge part of it, not having to wait for like the whole bundle or even part of bundle. It's just like what's the thing you changed, and that's it.
Awesome. So Devin, when you were digging into that, what are some good resources you recommend if someone else wants to learn about Snowpack? Is it just their page and their docs, or how did you get up to speed on it?
We did a bunch of research on different tools. Their docs are actually really well written. So I would recommend starting there. And they just released version 3.0 in January, and yeah, just add some significant things there. There's some stuff we're not really using yet, but they're kind of designing it to, minimize pulling in all, heavyweight NPM dependencies that have a lot of stuff that's not actually loaded in the browser. And so they have a CDN that can kind of load the specific part that's needed in the web, and to even kind of make dependency management easier. We're not using that part yet, but
nice.
Yeah.
And I'll say, I'll call myself out here. I was about to tell you like, oh, this is really interesting. You should give a talk on like an intro to Snowpack. And then I was like, wait, somebody reached out to me when I was in the middle of debugging something, giving a talk on something, and I look and I have a missed message from Devin Wilson saying I'd like to give a talk at DenverScript on an intro to Snowpack. So yeah, I'll send you the link. This sounds like a really cool talk, and thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. So
all right, thanks everybody. This is great. Very, very productive JS land.
And so I'll share it out tomorrow in the comments, or also in the Denver oh God, it's been a long day. Denver Devs channel. There we go. Got it. Finally got it. Awesome. Well, our first speaker up is Angie Davis. Or sorry, Davidson. My
Yes,
bad.
hello all. Let me share my screen real quick. All right. So my talk today is about React keys. And my name is Angie Davidson. I have been coding. I did a coding bootcamp, which I just completed in September. And then within the coding bootcamp afterwards, I decided to stay on as a mentor and really the first line of defense when someone comes up with a bug that's in the bootcamp at that point. And when I was in the bootcamp and then afterwards, I noticed that everyone who starts with React always has this bug that happens. And it's a bug with unique keys, and that's kind of weird. So I wanted to give a talk about what's going on here. So in React, when you're dynamically rendering a list, in this case, we have list.map. When you're dynamically rendering that list, oftentimes, your first time doing it, you're going to come up with this error. Each child in the list should have a unique key. And you always, you hit your head and you're like, oh no, I've got an error. I've got to deal with it. How do I deal with it? What's this error about? And it's just a warning. So a lot of people ignore it because it doesn't really matter. But a lot of people also really want to get rid of that warning. And the question is, does that actually matter? So when you look at the React docs, it shares this set of information here. And, it says, do it to do.id. So you have a unique ID that you're setting as a key for every element in your list. But then you read a little further and you're like, okay, I really don't have an ID associated with it. Maybe I'll just throw in this index. And when you say that the key is equal to index, React believes you know what you're doing. And therefore, it's just keys. Nothing can go wrong here, right? So when you do this, React says you know what you're doing and gets rid of the error. So the error is fixed. There's no more problem. But let's take a little deeper look. So in this case, the key is equal to index. We think we're good to go. Let's take a look at an example here. Here's one example. And we can see in this that we have a list. Where is it? So here we've got a list, and somewhere, why can't I find it? Of course, I'm going to look at this one now because I can't find that one. Here we go. We're mapping to a list, and we are producing this apple, mango, grape. And let's say I get rid of the peach, and it has this awesome transition. So as you noticed, it transitioned out of the peach. But let's say I want to get rid of the apple. I got rid of the apple, but it transitioned with something else. If I want to get rid of this mango now, notice there's a problem with how it transitions. And the reason that it works when you hit the last item is because that doesn't change your indexes for the previous items. However, when you click on like an earlier item, refresh this real quick. So when I click on like an apple, right, it's going to change the index of mango, grape, and peach. So mango is going to go from an index of 0 to 1, etc. And that's one of the reasons why it's screwing up on this transition. Trust me, over here, it also has a mapping, and it also goes with index. And of course, my computer's going to think for a second. Sorry. In a second, I'm going to type in something right in this form document. And if I add something to the start, we're going to notice that something weird happens. And that's what we're going to take a look at and see if we could understand what's going on when my computer decides it's done thinking. There we go. So let's say hello here. Notice we have ID 1, hello, add to the start. Now my form now associates this hello with the number 2. It's clearly not what I wanted. This is 1. And if I try it again, add to the start, again, this is some weird stuff going on. Let's see if this works. Now, instead of adding to the front, I'm going to add to the end. And we should see that this now does exactly what we want to do. Again, the reason is because we're changing the index, and that screws things up. So let's go back to the presentation. All right. So we've just noticed that, yes, we've gotten rid of this error, quote unquote, but we still have some weird stuff going on in the actual script. Like, what's going on here? Let's bring it step back to, like, what's the reason for using keys to begin with? And the reason is because React works by comparing the DOM with the virtual DOM and then changing whatever is different. So when you're looking at a list, you have the original DOM, which has a set of nodes that are children, and it iterates through that original DOM with the new one. And it will look at it and say, okay, what's the same or different? So in this case, if I add something to the end, it'll say the list 1, this first item, matches this first item. I don't have to change anything. The second item matches the second item. I don't have to change anything. Okay, this third item is different. I'm just going to add it to the end. And everything's good. Works well. It's efficient. But what about if I add something to the beginning? So in this original list, I have Duke, and it's going to compare it to Connecticut. Oh, they're different. Let me re-render. It's going to look at the next item. And we have Vinilova. I can't pronounce it. And that's connected to Duke. That's different. I'm going to have to re-render. Again, it's different. I have to re-render. So the idea is when you're adding to the end, everything is the same and we don't have to re-render. So it's efficient, but things go weird when you're adding to the beginning or somewhere else in the middle of the list. And this is the reason why React has chosen to use keys. We're using keys because now instead of comparing Duke with Connecticut, you're going to compare the number 2015 with 2014. And you're like, okay, they're different. Re-render, add something to the beginning. Sorry, dogs are going crazy. And then it's going to look at Duke and check it out with Duke and say they're the same key, right? This 215, this 2015 are the same. So it's not going to re-render anything. It's going to be good to go. So in essence, it just added Connecticut and nothing else. So speed-wise, this is actually much more efficient than the previous example here. All right. So this is the motivation for using keys. But how do we choose to use a key? Or like, what do we choose as it? Well, our key should be unique among its siblings. So it's not necessarily globally, just among its siblings. That differentiates one sibling from the next. It should be stable, meaning it cannot change as you re-render a list. This key serves as a note to React to let them know which DOM or which node you are talking about within the DOM. And therefore, the key itself does not get passed down to the components. Now, you might be thinking, okay, I need a unique key. Maybe I don't have IDs associated with it. Maybe I'll use math.random. That's going to be unique for everything, right? Or chances are really good it's going to be unique for everything. It's actually a really bad idea. Don't do it. Reason being is the value will change each time you render, and that will cause huge problems, both with creation of the nodes, but also with comparing them. So don't do that. Instead, assign a unique ID to each one of your item that you're mapping through. It might take an extra 2 lines of code, but at least your code will work as you expect it to. And if you don't feel like creating that yourself, that's fine. Use a package. There's a number of packages online. One that was recommended was Nano ID. Feel free to use it. All right, so let's revisit example 1 and take a look at the difference by changing one word. So if I go back, ooh, those dogs are going crazy. If I go back and I change this key from the word index to maybe fruit. All right, once I change it to fruit, notice if I'm going to get rid of grape, my transition happens at grape, or if apple happens at apple, peach. So this is exactly what it should have looked like before. And by changing the key from index to fruit, I now have done it because I know in this case, each one of my fruits are unique and different. All right. Can you use index? Yes. Is it a good idea? Probably not. But you can use index when all of these items are met. So the array is static, never changing. You're not going to filter. You're not going to reorder. Or you're using it as a stack, which is first in is last out. We saw that working when I deleted the last element of the array. Also, when you're not using controlled forms. We saw the issue with, uncontrolled forms. We saw this issue in that second example, where when I typed in an item and we, added it to the front, like things got out of whack. Now, if you choose not to assign a key, it's going to default back to key equals index. That's why it gives the error and the warning. And then if you choose to say key equals index, it's going to assume you know what you're doing and you're doing that for a reason and allow you to, regardless of what the side effects are. All right, I know this wasn't a long talk, but maybe it was a little long, tuned out, and that's totally cool. Here's the key. All right, when making a list in React, using a unique identifier as the key, just do it. This will help you with efficiency and accuracy in whatever you want your code to do or React to demonstrate. With that, I want to give a huge thank you to DenverScript for setting this up, and specifically to Mike for inviting me to give a talk today. I also used a bunch of references. Just about everything came from the React docs, and then a couple of things from Stack Overflow, and a Medium article as well. But that is what I have for you today, and I hope it was helpful.
Thank you. Unmuted clap.
Awesome.
Thank you for that.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Angie. Mr. Dahlman.
Okay.
I guess, sorry, is there any questions for Angie? Okay. Awesome. Thank you again, Angie. Turn it over to Mr. Dahlman.
Awesome. All right, let me see if I can do this.
I believe in you.
Oh boy. Okay. All right, let me move some things around. Okie dokie. Cool. Hi, my name is Drew Dahlman. I am the co-founder and director of technology at a design and technology agency called Odd Common. We're based out of Brooklyn, New York. Deep down, I am a Denver kid. So about 10 years ago, I founded a conference called Develop Denver. It's a 2-day conference held in August. Obviously, this past year was weird. It's still weird, but hopefully, we can all get together and talk about code in person here in the coming months. I'm on Denver Devs. I'm there as Drew Dahlman. And then I'm also Mayas Partum on Twitter. So if you're into that, I do a lot of shit posting about random musings, things like that. Sometimes code, sometimes, I don't know, things that I'm thinking about. So that's me. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to talk about. So today we're going to talk about WebBluetooth and hacking consumer devices. There's a lot of stuff I'm going to cover here, and I guarantee you this is like tip of the iceberg, but I feel like it's something that recently I was working through kind of a proof of concept, and it was a really interesting thing to play with. and figured it would make kind of a good talk because it was one of those, that's neat. So I'm going to go over kind of a high level of what WebBluetooth is. Then we're going to actually look at some kind of devices and how things work. And then we're actually going to go and build something that you can interact with using WebBluetooth and a website. So what is WebBluetooth? So WebBluetooth is an experimental API that provides the ability to connect to and interact with Bluetooth low energy peripherals. It was introduced in Chrome 56 and respectively Chrome 70 in Windows. So it's been around for a little while, but the biggest piece to this is that more and more devices are actually starting to ship with LE built in. As we've all known, like Bluetooth has existed for a long time, but there's actually this new spec that was introduced in Bluetooth 4 that essentially allows for a low energy signal to allow you to interact with peripherals. So these kind of devices could be anything from heart rate monitor, if you've got like a smartwatch, light bulbs, we've all seen like the Philip Hughes, toy kits like this BB-8 right here. You've probably seen this where you can kind of code and hack around and like make BB-8 do certain things. They come in like little packages. There's switches, things like that. You can connect to headphones, cell phones, other computers. Everything, a lot of these newer devices actually have the LE built in, and they are utilized in numerous different ways. In terms of support, sorta. It's not really well supported, and this truly is an experimental kind of emerging technology. Something to kind of keep in mind when you're thinking about doing something with this or trying to, wanting to implement, you totally can. I would not advise using it in production. If you do use it in production, use it wisely. If you control the environment, there's actually a really great use cases for this, and you can do some really fun things with it. And I'll get into that a little bit more in detail. So there we go. Some terms and Bluetooth basics. So this is by no means a very deep dive into Bluetooth, but these are terms that you're going to hear me say quite a bit. And you'll see as you kind of start to explore Bluetooth and kind of the general spec. So let's get into it. Some terms: BLE, LE, Smart. This is the Bluetooth low energy. It was introduced into the Bluetooth 4.0 spec. Basically, this is a low energy way of communication for Bluetooth devices. So many things that you actually own already have this. So if you have AirPods, those have a low energy. If you have other headphones, those have low energy. If you have an iPad, that has low energy. So does your phone. So many, many devices. Peripheral. This is a device that can be connected to over LE. So these are any of those devices that actually implement the LE channel. Central, this is a device that can connect to a peripheral. So this would be a phone, a computer, anything that actually connects to the device. Gatt, this is a generic attributes profile. This basically is key value pairs. And Gatt essentially surrounds a number of other services available. And that actually leads us to services. So service is basically something that is available. So a good example of this is a battery, right? So every device has a battery. That's part of a service. And inside of a service is a characteristic. A characteristic would kind of describe basically an attribute of that service. So a battery has a level. There you go. Descriptor, that's basically the description of the characteristic. So sometimes there are descriptors, those are nice because you're looking at something and you're like, what does this do? This will tell you what it does. Oftentimes you actually don't see anything in the descriptor. Sometimes there are, sometimes you can write to them. And then a Gatt server. So a Gatt server is any device that is acting as a peripheral or a central role can actually host the server and expose services, characteristics, and descriptors. So I know that was a lot, but the general kind of the gist of this whole thing is essentially you have a device that can speak to other devices. You have a device that can connect to that device, and that other connected device can actually read some of the services that are available. Great example of this. You have a smartwatch, Fitbit. Fitbit actually implements their own proprietary Bluetooth signal, so you actually can't connect to a Fitbit, which I was a little bummed about. But most smartwatches, heart rate monitors, they have some kind of like LE channel. So example here, this is your peripheral. Inside of that, you have a service for your battery. And inside of that service, you have a characteristic of the battery level. So what is the actual level of said battery? So high level, those are kind of the things that you need to know as we kind of get into this. And I am, side note, I am going to kind of cruise through this because we've got kind of a lot of initial upfront, and then we're going to actually dive into some code. So I'm going to kind of go until we actually get there. A little bit about services and characteristics. So each service and characteristic, it consists of a 16-bit or a 128-bit unique identifier. There are standards that exist, and vendors can also implement their own. That's a long way of basically saying there's some standards around certain key characteristics and services. So battery service, that is something that is standardized across the entire spec. It follows the code of 18.0F. So for instance, on an iPad, you'll see this as 0000180F. That means this is the battery. Inside of that, you'll see a characteristic, and this is 2A19. So you'll see this listed as 00002A19. One thing about these is that vendors can do whatever they want. They don't necessarily need to implement spec. They can totally do other things. They could implement their own kind of IDs. Something that you'll see a lot is that they'll do like a vendor prefix, or they'll kind of make their own rules up. Sometimes they will follow it. So such as, the iPad does a good job at this. But there are other devices that I've noticed that have issues around this. There's other like really simple shorthand of just like battery _ service. There's also like heart rate _ monitor, things like that. So samples, this gets us into kind of starting to talk a little bit about what we have available. So Chrome has this awesome page for WebBluetooth samples. I hope you can still see this screen. Are we good? Can you see my Chrome?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So there's a bunch of great little examples here. You can kind of walk through each one of them and kind of get yourself immersed in what WebBluetooth is and kind of how it works and the syntax surrounding it. Where'd my presentation go? There we go. All right. So let's look at a code sample and what this actually looks like. So here is basically what this is doing is it's reading off of, what is the service you're looking for? Is there a specific name you're looking for a device? Is there a name prefix for a device? I want to look at all devices, but realistically what it all comes down to is this one line, and it's device await navigator Bluetooth request device options. This one line allows us to start communicating with Bluetooth LE devices that are all around us. So if I were to go ahead and run this, I'm going to wind up with something that looks like this. You're going to see basically kind of a prompt very similar to, when it requests your webcam, like the WebRTC stuff, any of those type of things. But what this one is actually going to prompt you to do is select a Bluetooth device that you want to pair with. And in this list, you're going to see a ton of stuff. You're going to see a bunch of things that are like unknown or unsupported device. I don't know why that shows up. It just does because, things. You'll see other things that are all over the place. And one note about this is that BLE is everywhere. It is absolutely everywhere. Your entire world is surrounded by it, right? we're all familiar with our Bluetooth devices that we have in our homes, but what you fail to realize is that our TVs have it. Your neighbors' TVs have it. Their speakers have it. So you'll wind up seeing things that actually don't even belong to you. They're literally, in another apartment building or like a floor below you or a floor above you. So like, I'm looking at this and, I see like this JBL Flip 4. I have no idea what that is, but you see them everywhere. So that's a kind of a note around that is that it's noisy and there's a ton of devices, but this is where it kind of gets a little bit of fun is that you can still discover things. So if we run that example, basically you can see here, I went in and I was trying to look for the battery service. It didn't return it because it doesn't like this battery service request. But it was able to give me the iPad, it was able to give me an ID, and then it just said, no, you did not connect. So, I mean, cool. We were able to see an iPad and connect to it via our browser. That's kind of a neat thing. All right. Cool. But what else can I do beyond just like looking at like batteries and looking at a heart rate monitor and things like that? This is where it gets really important. And this is some of the stuff that as I was kind of going through and working on, learning a bunch of this stuff, is Chrome has a bunch of built-in tools. Of course they do. So in Chrome, there are the Bluetooth internals. And with this, you are able to look at everything around you and actually dig into the specifics around services, characteristics, descriptions. You can actually explore the devices without ever actually having to write any code, which is a really nice thing. And we'll explain that a little bit later. But for all intents and purposes, this is a great way for you to understand. And, you know, as we really get into looking at consumer devices, what's available to me? How do I actually connect to this? How do I talk to it? What can it do? So if we look at that, right? So this is an example of me connecting to an iPad, right? So I've got my iPad here with me and I connected to it and it lists off all these services. So you can see I've got 180A, 1805, 180F, bunch of these other services. I don't know what any of those mean. What I do know though, is we have one that looks a little familiar to us, right? So if we dig in, we can see our characteristics. We dig into a characteristic and we start seeing these other things called properties and values, right? We go a little bit further, something about characteristics. So a characteristic has a number of different properties. These are the ones that are the most important for what we're going to be doing today, but there's a ton more. And again, highly encourage you to take a look at that. So read can be read, write can be written, and notify can be listened to, right? So those are all three things that you should probably be aware of as we're getting into this. So if we keep going, again, I bring this up is, so earlier we were talking about the standardized service names, right? So we have 0000180F, that's our battery. Inside of that, we have a characteristic that says 0002812A19. And then when we read it, we get a value and it's 0x54. That's a hexadecimal. That's another fun thing. So it's actually each one of these characteristics actually gives off different values. And the way it gets read is kind of up to you on how you want to parse it, and especially on how they want to encode it. So luckily in this instance, we know that a battery value is probably going to be a decimal. Inside of these Bluetooth internals, you can actually toggle between different types. So you can say, I want to read this as a hexadecimal. I want to read this as a UTF-8. Or I want to read it as just a decimal. So looking at this, my battery of the iPad is at 84%. So again, back to these properties. So a property has two things. Well, this one does. It has read and notify. So what that means is that I can read the battery, but I could also get notified about a battery, right? So this brings up this idea of, okay, it's sending out a signal. So if that means that, you know, the battery goes down a level, I could get a notification. Or maybe you're building an app that actually is going to watch and monitor, you know, what the current level of the battery is. Maybe if it gets below a certain level, it does something kind of a neat thing. You can just essentially hook up an event listener to this particular characteristic. Cool. So what else? Now we get into Hackerman. And this is where we're actually going to kind of dive into a little bit of code. But instead of Hackerman, I'm actually calling this more reverse engineering man. We're not necessarily hacking. What we are going to do is we're going to look at like what the hell is going on certain devices, right? So I just walked you through the iPad. It was following standards. It was actually implementing things. There are other devices out there. Like I said, vendors implement their own, you know, decisions and they can do things. So it's time to actually look at real code, and this is time to get in there. So I have a GitHub repo. If you'd like to follow along, it's up on github.com/Drew Dahlman, WebBluetooth examples. I pushed this up just a little bit ago. It should be public, and hopefully you can kind of see that. It looks like it's open. So you can go in there. Basically, I'm going to walk through a bunch of these branches as a good way for us to kind of talk through this, and I can have them in. Thank you. I did not think that I could use the chat. Haha. So if you want to follow along, you can. A couple of big notes with this is that in order to kind of participate with some of these devices, you're going to need an iPad, and you're also going to need a pair of Galaxy Bud Lives. Not many people have them, but if you do, you actually can participate. Otherwise, you're going to be kind of passive, but utilize these things in this repo as a way to kind of understand and see how some of this stuff works. So with that, let's actually look at some code, because now things get a little bit more interesting. So in the project, if you look at it, it's a very, very simple project. I'm just using parcel just to make things a little bit easier, but realistically, you didn't even need that. It's very, very simple. Essentially what I have is I have a button called Click Me. This Click Me, so this is very similar to if you've ever, experienced any of the get user media, playing video, playing audio, those type of things. It requires user action. So this is one of those things. So basically when we click it, we're going to init our Bluetooth. And what it's going to do is it's going to look for a device is going to basically say, hey, give me everything you got, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click this. And here's all of our noise, right? So a bunch of unknown or unsupported devices. I see my iPad, I see my phone. It's a total mess. If you click on an unknown or unsupported device, it might give you something, but there's not a whole lot of information around that, right? So it's not really useful. But if I do go in and I click on something like an iPad, I do get some information. I actually get its name, I get an ID. So that's just kind of a basic connection. So let's actually go into a little bit more. I'm going to move some things around. And I'm going to check out the iPad battery branch. And so inside of this, what we're actually going to do is we're going to look at an iPad battery. So once again, back to what I was saying, the service for a battery is 0000180F. The characteristic for the battery level is 0002A19, and then all of this stuff. I'm just going to make those some variables up top, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to request the device. So the first thing that I'm actually going to do here that you notice is apply a filter. This is super important and very helpful. There are obviously MDM, always refer to it. This has all the goodies. This will walk you through all of the things that you're trying to understand about how do I do X, Y, and Z? What does this even mean? I don't understand it. This basically covers most everything. So like I was saying, one of the great little things is that you can filter by name. So essentially what I want to say is, all right, I want to look for any Bluetooth device out there, but I only want the ones that have iPad as part of their name. Give me those. And then along with that, I'm actually going to supply a service. So this battery service, Uuid, right? So this idea that, hey, I actually want your battery service. Then what it's going to wind up doing is connecting to the server, right? Remember, we were talking about the fact that any device that has a Bluetooth low energy and gives off that signal can actually host the server. So we're going to connect to it. Then what we're actually going to do is we're going to say, hey, give me your service. I'm going to log that out and then give me that characteristic, and then I'm going to read it. Once I've read it, I'm going to convert that over into a decimal, and we will have a percentage. And then bonus points, we can still listen to it. So if everything goes well and we're doing some live, nothing like live demos. This is good. Live demos over the internet. There's nothing that can go wrong. So I connect to my iPad. Sometimes it does take a little bit to broker the connection, but once it does, then you can see here it comes. So we connected to the server. I have my Gatt service, and here's my battery. So my battery is at 37%. I should probably charge this. But right there, we're able to actually connect. We're able to get something useful out of it and do something with it. So that's neat. And I feel like, this is basically where all the tutorials basically take you to, and then you are kind of off on your own, and either you're working with a kit or you just, good luck. Let's actually talk about some other services that we don't know what the hell that means, right? So I'm going to now check out the iPad unknown service. So check this thing out, and let's look at our Bluetooth internals real quick. And I'm going to show you what this might look like. So inside of our iPad, we have this service right here, this top level service, and it's got two characteristics. One is a read. They're both reads. Okay, what do those do? So what I'm going to do in the code is basically say, okay, give me this service ID, right? So I'm just going to copy this guy, and I'm going to put it in here. And then this characteristic. What is this characteristic? Well, an easy way to do this, and I'll show you here before we go on, but this will make more sense as we continue. So if I do a read, I wind up with a hexadecimal value, and I'm like, cool, I don't know what that means. If I put it in decimal, that makes 0 sense. What if I do it in UTF-8? Okay, iPad 812. All right, so with what we're about to do, I want to see iPad 812. Again, I have no idea what this means, but I think it probably has something to do with like maybe a model or something along those lines, right? So I have taken that characteristic and I put it in. Again, I'm going to connect using the filter of iPad, an unknown service as the service. I'm going to connect, and then I'm going to go ahead and read. So if I go ahead and run this, what am I going to get? I am going to get a thing called a data view. So data view basically contains an array buffer. This array buffer is going to contain that hexadecimal data. This one is 8 bytes. So it says something. We don't really necessarily know what that means. We can go ahead and we can read the length of that. And then another thing that we can do, so let's go ahead and read the length. This is going to come back with 8. Cool. So I know that. So this right here is just kind of a nice way to just see a little bit of like what the hell is actually coming back to you. And again, this is one of those things that sometimes you'll read it in the internal tools, but you won't actually get anything, and it doesn't mean anything, or it just says it failed. So you're kind of like, what does this mean? This is a nice way. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop over all the bytes, and I'm going to convert those over to hexadecimal, and we're going to read those. So by doing this, what I'm going to wind up with is this hex value of 69506164382C3132. Cool. All right, well, that means something. I'm communicating. I'm able to do that. But I feel like there's maybe a better way to do that, especially, given maybe this actually does mean something. So another neat little thing, if you're not aware of it, is the Text Decoder API. There's another link to this. Basically, it's an interface represents a decoder for a specific text encoding, such as UTF-8. So if we wanted to convert it over to UTF-8, we can. So I'm going to make a new UTF-8 decoder. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our unknown service value, the buffer of that, right? It's 8 bytes. And I'm going to turn it into an int or 8 array. And then I'm going to decode it, right? So if I run this, hey, I saw this before. I know this. I know this. It's the iPad 812. I don't know what that means, but it means something. So let's just go ahead and Google that. And what does that mean? A list of mobile devices and machine types. So that's probably in here. Oh, there it is. iPad Pro 12.9 inch. Cool. So that's kind of the work back of, all right, so I've got some crazy data that's coming back to me, but how do I actually do something with it? And luckily for us, the sanity check is available in the Bluetooth internals. So I know that I'm able to actually do this the right way, right? I'm actually getting the proper data from this. So what happens if we take this kind of to the next step? Right, so this is friendly territory. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check out the Galaxy Buds branch. So a little bit of background. Stash those changes. Okay, so a little bit of background. Galaxy Buds. Basically, how this came about was, hey, we're interested to see if we could actually build a web experience around these headphones. Like, what could we do with them? And, it's like, oh, cool, that sounds great. In theory, of course, we could probably do something, but I don't know anything about it. Do we have like a spec sheet? Do we have any kind of information around them? The simple answer is no, because these are proprietary. These are, a device of Samsung. They have their own Samsung iPhone app. They have their own Samsung Google app, like Android app. So there's not a whole lot of information, and they kind of, guard that. But that said, there is an LE signal that they put off. So let's take a look at what these Samsung Buds do. So in our Bluetooth internals, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these in so they kind of turn on. And I'm going to start a scan. So starting a scan, I can see these Galaxy Buds live right here. I'm going to go ahead and click inspect. So as I do that, you see that it's unsupported. The biggest reason is because they give off 2 signals. They give off a Bluetooth and they give off a BLE. So if I go back to my devices, you see this, the Galaxy Buds LE. If I click on that, then I'm actually able to connect to it. And this is a huge thing. This is one of those like, oh, right, okay, because there's two signals. There's Bluetooth and there's Bluetooth LE. LE, again, is meant for more data messaging. It's meant for communicating with a device, making it do something really quickly, but not like any heavy lifting, right? So you're not going to stream music. You're not going to do anything over them. So in looking at this in the inspector, I see that I have one service. Hopefully you can see this. There's one service. This service has two characteristics. One of them is read, write without response, and write. Another one is read and notify. Again, these mean nothing to me. I have no idea what these numbers mean. They're just UUIDs that are used by Samsung in their devices. So the very first thing is, let's try to read this. Oh, I can't read it. Okay, let's try to read this one. Nope, can't. Okay, well, so this is going well. Let's try to read the descriptor. Nice, absolutely nothing. This is terrible. Okay, so it's not going well. So then you're kind of like, okay, well, what do I do? So, oh, I did get a read success. I don't know where it went, but okay. Cool. So at this point, basically, you're in this point where you're looking at a device. You don't know anything about it. You have no idea that, it's not implementing a battery spec. It's not implementing anything that you've seen before. These are just kind of random UUIDs. So if I go in here, what I'm going to do is I can see this one has a read and a notify. So that notify that we were talking about earlier, that means that it's going to send off information, right? So I would expect to maybe see something from it. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this UUID. First, I'm going to take this service and I'm going to copy that, paste it into here. Then I'm going to take the UUID, take that, put it in here. And then I'm going to run my filter. This filter in particular is running a name prefix. So this is basically, I want a device with a specific name at the very front, and I want this specific service. So I'm going to go through, listen for it. I'm going to get the characteristic, and then I'm going to just listen for some notifications, and let's see what happens. All I'm going to do is just kind of read this out. So if I click that and I say, all right, hey, well, I'm getting stuff. I don't know what any of that means. It's numbers, but there's stuff happening. So we know that something is there. Let's maybe try to, convert this. So let's go ahead and give this a shot to try to run our decoder, right? So the last time we ran the decoder, we were able to come up with a UTF string, and it kind of made more sense. So if I run this again, get some notifications. Oh, great. More. This makes perfect sense. Yes. See? Ta-da. We have solved it. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's try that again. Let's try that decode method. So you remember earlier when I was like, let's just make a hex out of this so that it's something that does, it shows something. It's not just total garbage gibberish that you can't even understand. Let's actually just see if we can come up with some kind of hex value for the output. So if I go ahead and do that, then what I wind up with is, drum roll, maybe. Oh, this is taking a little while. Oh boy. What I'll wind up with is basically a number of hex values that essentially to describe all of these messages. Again, they're kind of gibberish and they don't really make a whole lot of sense. Let me try this one more time, see if this will go through. Well, I broke something. Anyway, what you would see is a number of hex values that kind of come through. So taking that, kind of looking at the fact that we're getting a ton of messages that are pouring in, there's something to them. If we were to actually see them come through, which is unfortunate, oh, you know what it is? Being connected to multiple devices sometimes can throw issues. Anyway, when this message comes through, what it comes through with is it's prepended with this code of FD, which I assume is probably something along the lines of some kind of vendor prefix, right? So it means something to us. So I'm going to check this out. I'm going to go to git checkout Galaxy Buds parsing. Cool. So now we're actually going to kind of take a look at this a little bit further. So same thing, I'm going to listen to the notifications. All I'm going to do is take all of the data, the event data that's coming into me, and I'm just going to push it into an array. And then I want to kind of look at what these arrays look like, right? Like what do each one of these bytes and one of these messages look like? So if I come in here, let's see if this actually works. Live coding. Hey, there. Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Now we've got some stuff happening. So as you can see, there's like all these messages coming through and they're just kind of like nonsense. Like you can see that, okay, FD is consistent. This one's 29, this one's 17, 65, probably something important. I don't know. But here's where it gets a little interesting, right? So if we're looking at these headphones have a number of operations. So one of the operations is a single click, right? So I have them in, I do a single click. Oh, I get some output. That's interesting. Do it again. Okay, cool. So this probably means something. I'm gonna put that under my single tap. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, so I got another message. All right, so that means that this message probably corresponds to some kind of single tap, right? I don't know exactly what it says, but it does do that. Another capability of the headset is to double tap. So, okay, well, I got a message. All right, so now we know that we're on the right track. We at least know that this is a capability and these headsets do put this off. So let's do another double tap. Hey, got another message. All right, well, and these are starting to look a little bit more consistent. If you can tell, we're starting to kind of define some patterns. So let's do the triple tap. Once again, I get a message. Fantastic. Hopefully these are not just random, but they actually mean things, right? One more. Hey, all right, so things are looking good. Cool, so nice, this is neat. So long hold start and long hold end. So these also have noise canceling. So if I hold down, it's going to turn on noise canceling. So if I do that, hey, I get 3 messages. I get a message when I started holding, which is this one. And then I got a message when it was like in the middle of it. And that's actually when the noise canceling went on. It sounds really weird to hear my voice right now because I'm noise canceled. So they are on. And then I got one when it was completed. Cool. So now we're starting to be able to kind of infer a little bit about what the hell these things are doing. Let's do this one more time just to make sure, right? So if I do this, cool, now they're off. But here's an interesting little bit. This message is totally different than this message, right? Oh, so that actually means that it's sending out another message of another long hold start, a message in the middle of it, and a message at the end. So there's something here that, you know, we're not like a bunch of numbers. We're in the matrix. Let's do it one more time, especially with these long holds, right? So if I do another long hold, I get my 3 messages, and I'm able to take this long hold start. What was my message? Here's my 8-bit message. That's not what I wanted. Oh boy. And then we've got this long hold end. All right, so that's cool. And then let's do one more time with our turning the sound, the noise canceling off. Cool. All right, so noise canceling is off. I got more messages, and now we are cooking with a bunch of stuff we don't totally understand, but there might be something here. Now I think it's time to kind of investigate a little bit. So, that was a lot. And as you can see, we've got a ton of data. Hopefully you guys can see this. I can kind of zoom in a little bit more. So we've got all these like hex codes, right? And what we can start to see is some similarities between each one, right? So the way I've broken this out, we've got our single taps, we have our double taps, the triple taps, the long hold start. the message that comes between those, the long hold end, long hold start B, the secondary message. So we're starting to identify that, okay, these come in patterns. Here's the FD, right? So this means that this is probably a vendor prefix. This 1C probably is something along those lines. D0, it shows up. I don't know. Maybe it's important. This 2D does repeat. This 00 seems to be somewhat normal between all of these messages. It kind of comes and goes. But the biggest thing that we want to look at is, what are the differences between each one of these messages, right? So on a single tap, I got two messages that were very similar, but we can see that there are differences. So if we start to look at where are the similarities, so right here, this is kind of interesting. 2C1320, that is consistent. 2C1340, consistent. 2C1360, consistent. Okay, now we've got some patterns going on. What do these mean? So this is where we start to get into kind of, maybe there actually is something buried in here. What my guess is that probably this first little bit right here is the vendor prefix. Maybe this is some kind of time code. There's probably some other information that's encoded within this, but then this itself is probably the actual command, right? So now we're actually looking and we're starting to identify what are the commands? What are the things that we're getting? What are the things that actually make sense? Same thing here, right? So we have this this 0130D4DD. I will cut to the chase in that doing enough testing, you start to realize that if you do enough of these, more integers change and things change. And there are areas of the same message coming through, but you'll see that slight changes happen between them. So you kind of need to start to identify what the hell those changes are. So let's actually look at that. So what I'm basically going to say is any time I get an 8-byte message, I'm going to actually splice from the 5th index into C all the way to the end. So that would be this message, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 all the way to the end, right? So this is going to give me a code of 11C4DD, right? Any of my 32, I'm going to go from the 13th into C, 3 forward, and then I'm going to join those and get rid of everything else. So if we look at what that looks like for a single tap, 1, 2, or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 2C1320. So here's my code. Here's my code. This is the next command. This is the next command. So what we're doing is we're actually just taking these commands that, again, we don't have the key. I don't know how they've encoded this. I have no idea what these message payloads are actually supposed to be, but through just kind of some general looking at it and taking some time to really look at the messages that you wind up getting, what did I do? You're able to essentially determine patterns. And sometimes you just have to do that. You might not be able to understand it. Again, I have no spec sheet around this. In certain instances, for instance, if we go back and we look at those internals of the, I don't have it up there, but one of the service, the characteristics that it was available, you could actually write to it. And my guess and kind of the way that I'm thinking about it is, more than likely, I could probably turn the sound canceling on and off by sending it one of these commands in this format. I don't know what the format that it needs is, but I could probably write to it, eventually figure that out. And that's a lot of these devices, right? When you have no context around it, it's kind of up to you to just kind of, well, I'm gonna, MacGyver this thing out. So if we come in here and I go ahead and just do this switch. So essentially what I've got are all of my codes put together, right? So this is basically, I'm looking for 30, D4, DD is gonna be noise canceling enabled, noise canceling disabled, all of those things. So let's just go ahead and give this a shot and see how it works. If it will connect. Oh boy, oh boy. Hey. All right, so I'm getting a bunch of, again, random noise, unknown commands, things like that. But let's actually do some of our commands. So a single tap. Right here, single tap, double tap. double tap, triple tap. Nice. All right, sound canceling on. There it is. Noise canceling off. Nice. There it is. So we were basically able to take a bunch of noise that made absolutely no sense and turn it into something that we can understand. And if you're building an application around something that you have no context around, it just takes a little bit of time of going through and looking at the messages that are actually provided. And again, these devices are noisy. They give off a ton of stuff, and you can kind of just dig through and kind of make assumptions around, well, I know it does this. What does it do if I do something with it? So to give you kind of an example of something that you could do with exactly this, I'll show you a little kind of prototype demo that I put together that actually utilizes this technology. Well, maybe my internet is kind of been wild today, so maybe this is going to work. Or maybe not. Well, shoot. Basically, what I wound up doing is taking this exact same thing and making a headphone onboarding product. So it was basically like, okay, welcome to your new headphones. Let's pair them with your computer. Let's pair them with this site. Let's go ahead and do it. And this gets back to some of the ways that this technology, while it is experimental, can be used in production if you own the ecosystem and if you're doing stuff. So I have an Android right here. The overall experience on mobile with an Android with Samsung Buds Live, amazing. It's one of the most cool, like just fun onboarding things that you're like, oh my God, my headphones, I'm touching them. This website is changing and doing stuff. It gives you this kind of unique new opportunity. And there, again, there are tons of devices out there. Some of them are made to be hacked with, and some of them are not, but you can actually get into them. And that's it. Go for it. Hack the planet. I know that was a lot, and there was kind of a ton of stuff in there, and it's kind of heavy. So I would recommend, if you want to, just go through the GitHub repo and then continue to kind of explore and check out some of the samples that are available out there. So yeah, that's what I got.
Thank you for throwing in both of those gifts of Hackerman and
that was for you.
I asked him which one he was going to use, and he surprised me. He used both. Very proud.
Got you.
We are over time, but I know that was a large brain dump of all craziness. You're good. But maybe we can take a few questions. I know some people had to hop off, but does anyone got a question for Drew?
Drew, what prompted you to get started playing with that?
What's that?
What prompted you to get started playing with how to hack your headphones and other things?
It was kind of just a client request came by of, hey, can you do something with these headphones? And I was like, maybe. And that was kind of the prompt. And I always like to say, in theory. It's always in theory until you do it or it doesn't work out. And then you're like, so good news, bad news. It sort of did this thing and we can do stuff. Because their thing was like, hey, could we actually send the signal to it? And I was like, I don't know. I've got like 2-3 days to like play around with this. Let's see. Like I said, if you don't have the spec, it's really hard to like build things that truly tightly integrate, but you can build stuff that does stuff based on them. And that was kind of the general learning around that. And like I said, like I took my fiance's cube for her keys, and I was like, okay, let's see what I can do with this thing. And like I was like writing data to it, and then it started lighting up, and I'm like, okay, so I'm getting somewhere. I can do stuff with it. Yeah.
Anyone else?
I'll ask a quick one.
Yeah.
Did you find any particular devices that had really good open specs published in available documentation?
Yeah, so you can, I mean, I didn't find anything that I was kind of looking for. Like I said, oh, sorry, now my dogs are doing the doing the dog thing. I didn't necessarily find anything that was like super open, like within my house, but I would not be surprised if those things exist. Like I said, there's lots of kits out there that do have the specs and everything like that. The problem a lot of times with consumer electronics is that they don't provide those SDKs unless they're truly made to. So like Hughes, for instance, does have that. But yeah, long way to answer the question is no, I did not find anything in my house, but they do exist. They are out there.
All right, thanks a lot.
Drew, that was awesome.
Justin, hey buddy.
Made me think. Some of my students are using Arduino BLE devices. So that could be a way to make your own custom electronics that could then send your own custom BLE messages or advertisements, whatever, to your browser. So it could be cool.
That's exactly it. And I think that that's where you start to get into some really interesting territory is if you control the overall environment and you're the one implementing something on like an Arduino or any of that, now your ability to connect to other devices is so much more open. And it's do something where, you know, as a user, if I have an Android, I could literally go and interact with something that exists based on some Arduino BLE stuff. iPhones, they have not implemented it because Apple is Apple, but I have a feeling that eventually they're going to get there. But that's exactly it. Like you have this has the ability to connect in different ways that it's no longer like an internet connection is not required. You can just do it via Bluetooth.
What are you drinking?
Wine. I'm out of whiskey.
Solid backup.
Yeah. Out of whiskey, and I've got a box of wine sitting around, so we're gonna go through that. Yeah.
A box as like a case, or a box like it's actually like the black wine box wine?
Yeah, you know, a Boda box. I'm not picky.
Awesome. Is there any more questions for Drew? Awesome.
Thank you guys.
Well, thank you guys, Angie and Drew, for speaking. It was really awesome. Good talks. You can do like real claps. Awesome. Yeah, Angie, Drew, if you guys want to send me over slide links or resources, let me know and I'll post them as well. Otherwise, thank you all for joining. We will see you next month.
See you next month, everybody. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
See ya.